In this video, we're going to discuss why we care about tuples and when we might use them. Now, I'll be honest with you, I am not a huge fan of tuples, and I don't think you're going to really be using them in a very regular basis with Typescript. There are a couple exceptions. Most notably, I think that if you're ever working with a CSV file and you want to represent, say, a single row, you might reach out to a tuple. We'll actually work with the CSV file later on inside this course, and so you'll see a great example of that in action. So let me tell you exactly why I don't think you're going to be using tuples that often. At the bottom of this file, I'm going to declare a new variable called car specs, like so. And I'm going to assign it some data that has a real important meaning around a car, like some specifications around a car. So I'm going to assign it a tuple of 400, 3354, like so. And I'll make sure that I annotate the type on here to make sure it's really clear that this is a tuple. So it's a number and a number like so. Okay, so here's the question. What do these numbers mean to you? I mean, looking at this line of code right here in isolation, what do those numbers mean? Clearly, it has something to do with these specs around a car, but what is the purpose of these numbers? Well, for us as engineers, I don't think that we can really look at this line of code and understand what is going on here. We know that there are two values, we know that they are numbers, but that's pretty much it. So let's try writing out that same type of data structure right here, but instead as an object. So if I write out a very similar variable right here, maybe I'll call it car stats this time, I'm going to make it an object, and because it's an object this time, I have to add in a key and a value. So for the value 400, I'm going to give a key of horsepower. Horsepower, yeah, there we go. And then for the 3354, I'll put in weight, like so. All right, so what am I trying to illustrate here? Well, if we use a tuple to represent some meaningful data, it's really hard for you and I as engineers to look at this value right here and understand what we are trying to say. However, in an object format right here, because we are forced to put in a key, it is immediately obvious what we are working with. I can look at this object right here and understand, oh, horsepower, 400, got it. And then for weight, this is the weight of maybe a car in pounds, 3,354 pounds. So when we make use of an object to model a record, it's really clear what we are working with at one glance. But when we are working with a tuple, much harder to understand exactly what is going on at a glance. So honestly, I think that in general, anytime we want to model a record or record it in our application somehow, we're going to stick with a JavaScript convention of reaching for an object as opposed to a tuple. Now, like I said, there are some corner cases where we might want to use this in some types of applications, and we will see an example of it later on inside this course, actually with one of the first 2 or 3 applications we're going to work on. All right, so I'm sorry to teach you about tuples and then say, hey, we're never going to use them, but nonetheless, it is a feature of TypeScript that is very prominently kind of featured in the official documentation. So I just wanted to make sure you have at least a passing idea of what these tuple things are all about. So let's take a quick pause right here, and we're going to move on to our next topic in the next video.